Bonsoir. It is an enormous pleasure to be here with you tonight. My name is Anja Geitman. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, and on behalf of several faculties, I welcome you here. As you probably know, the McGill School of Environment is really not only an interdisciplinary entity, it is actually consists of partners that cover essentially half of McGill University, and those include the Faculty of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, as well as the faculties of Arts, of Law, and of Science. And so I'm here on behalf of the other three deans as well. The McGill School of Environment was founded pretty much exactly 20 years ago, and based on an inspiration, really, and the need and necessity for going above and beyond our own discipline and trying to understand the complex problems in the world by looking at them from different angles at the same time. And so it was a natural way to think at problems such as sustainable development from these different angles. We are very honored to have with us tonight the Dean of Agriculture of 20 years ago, who contributed to setting up the school, Deborah Buzzard. Thank you for being here. She is now the Deputy Vice Chancellor and Principal of the UBC Okanagan campus, and so it's wonderful to have her here. We also have here, I believe, members of the first cohort from the McGill School of Environment, as well as members of Nature Conservancy and Équiterre. I would like to highlight that the Honorable Catherine McKenna, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, sends her best regards and wishes us an excellent event tonight. And I would be remiss in mentioning the fact that this kind of event, and especially this series of talks, is supported by a very generous donor, and we're very thankful to her as well. To conclude, I would like to call upon the director of the McGill School of Environment, Professor Sylvie de Blois, to introduce our speaker for tonight. Thank you. I wish you a wonderful evening.
Bonsoir, alors je suis Sylvie de Blois, je suis directrice de l'École d'environnement de l'Université McGill. Je suis très contente de vous accueillir ce soir pour célébrer ou souligner notre 20e anniversaire, comme Anya, notre doyenne, l'a mentionné juste avant. I would like also to acknowledge my fellow MSE directors over the years, Peter Brown, Nigel Roulet, Jim Pies, and Marilyn Scott, as well as the joint and associate members and initiative staff whose commitment helped the school grow. And most of all, I want to salute our dedicated and passionate students. They're the best part of the School of Environment. In 1998, the MSE motto was, "Change is possible." I think we're going to talk about change a lot tonight. Although some of that change is indeed happening, the environmental challenges ahead of us are daunting. As we were walking here with our guest speaker, we were talking about that. How do we remain optimistic in these conditions, right? To help support change, I encourage you to have a look at the crowdfunding initiative that the MSc students have created through the Seeds of Change platform at McGill. After all, students in this room tonight will live through this century to assess the success of our efforts for a more sustainable world. What we wish them is to be able to claim 20 years from now that change was indeed possible. Our path to a better environment requires good science, we all know that, but more than ever, it also requires the ability to bring together different perspectives and different worldviews. It requires bridge builders who can help us find common ground, and finding common ground may be the most important challenge that we have today. I see our guest speaker tonight, Professor Gina McCarthy of Harvard University, as one of these bridge builders. Professor McCarthy has an impressive record in helping define and implement environmental policy locally and globally. She graduated from the University of Massachusetts with a Bachelor of Arts in Social Anthropology. She also received a Master of Science in Environmental Health, Engineering, and Planning and Policy from Tufts University. That sounds like very interdisciplinary training to me. She has said that Rachel Carson, who pioneered the environmental movement while being a civil servant, was one of her role models, right? For 30 years, Gina McCarthy served to protect the environment under different administrations. In 2013, she was nominated by President Obama as the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. Her nomination was viewed as an indication of the seriousness of the administration to battle climate change. She survived the long nomination process. I think it's an understatement to say that, right? That involved answering over 1,000 questions. At the EPA, she led groundbreaking initiatives to cut air pollution, protect water resources, and reduce greenhouse gases. She worked also with the United Nations and the World Health Organization and represented the U.S. on global environmental initiatives. Over her career, Gina McCarthy has been known for her pragmatic approach, her thorough understanding of all sides of environmental debates, and her strong commitment to science-based solutions to environmental problems. In 2018, the Harvard School of Public Health recognized her achievements and expertise by naming her director of the new center, Sea Change, Center for Climate, Health, and the Global Environment. The center aims to transform science into meaningful actions that will deliver a healthier, more just, and sustainable world. These are certainly worthy goals that we all share here at McGill. So join me, please, in welcoming Professor Gina McCarthy.
Thank you very much, Sylvie, and thank you, Dean, for inviting me. It's a wonderful opportunity for me to be here. In fact, I'm very excited. I will tell you that I'm always very excited to be anywhere other than Washington, D.C., especially if I can get out of the country. That's even better. So it is wonderful to be here. And I thought, we'd talk a little bit, but first I wanted to tell you that I worked in state government, actually local governments for quite a while, and state governments, and then at the federal level. But I have done work with Canada now for at least 20 years. Because I worked in New England for quite a while, and I worked for the New England governors and Eastern Canadian premiers when we did some early work on mercury and some early work on climate change. It has been a meaningful and productive effort to work as neighbors. I can remember talking to Canada in the last couple of administrations with work that we were doing in our energy sector and work that they were doing and we were doing on cars together. It has been a meaningful and productive relationship each and every year, and I want to thank you all for it. I spent a lot of time working on NAFTA in the CEC, which is now sort of like Prince when he was a symbol. It's now an unpronounceable acronym, which in a bureaucracy is a terrible thing. So we'll see how all of those changes work, but it is great to be here. And I thought, and what I like to do when I go to college campuses is to make sure that I try to give a little bit of a long view, because the short view is difficult. But let's start a little bit back, because I am 64. I was born in 1954. If you saw what the world looked like, all of you folks that are in college now, you wouldn't recognize what it looked like back then, because there was actually a headline around that time which said that the smog that shrouded Los Angeles is a dirty gray blanket flung across the city. And another called it a dense, eye-stinging layer of smoke that dimmed the sun. And it was the preeminent pollution capital of the world, Los Angeles, at that point in time. And they used to cancel school for smog days. It was the Orange County, which is still called Orange County, seemed to get its name by the color of the sky rather than the kind of fruit they grew there. It was awful, and it had nothing on Cleveland, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I mean, in those days, it was great because you saw pollution, you tasted it, you walked through it, you couldn't ignore it. It was really cool. It's so hard today. Talk about climate change, everybody goes, where is this climate change? You know what I mean? And it was the good old days, right? That's what Rachel Carson was getting all excited about. And as a result of all of that visible pollution that really was felt by everybody, change happened. Change happened dramatically. What happened is that there was pressure that was built by millions of people, not by the politicians, not by the grown-ups, but by the young people, by people at my age and by people in college who just weren't going to tolerate a future that looked like that anymore. And that's when Earth Day came to be. And that's when we had the US EPA created by absolutely one of the greatest presidents in the history of the United States, a Republican to boot. Well, you guys are smart, you know who it is. Richard Nixon! The stuff about him being the greatest was a joke. I just want to make sure that for the record, I clarify that. And that's when the US Congress passed the Clean Air Act, which has actually been such a monumental benefit to the US and beyond. Not just to clean up the air and save lives, but to develop technologies that could be taken up by other countries and utilized for the same purpose. And it also happens to be the statute under which we regulated carbon pollution. Why? Because Congress authorized us to, and they told us we had to. If you look at the actual wording of that statute and the work that we went through to prove that carbon pollution is actually a huge threat to public health in our environment. That's why we regulated carbon pollution. But I have to tell you that today I know that the kind of challenges we face seem much more under the radar screen. You know, you can't see them, you can't taste them, you can't feel them. In fact, people in the United States think that everything is just okie dokie, which is why I think we have a Washington administration that today thinks it's going to be just fine to roll back all of the rules that the prior administration did. And we did a lot of them. We didn't do them because we enjoyed doing them. We did them because there was work to be done to protect public health in the United States of America. We were authorized to do it, we were required to do it, and damn it, we got it done. And those rules, I will have to tell you, were monumentally creative because of great people in the EPA who were bureaucrats in the best sense of the word. They were scientists, they were lawyers, they were planners, they were economists. They were people who could think outside the box and deliver as public servants for the folks in the United States. And it was the proudest time of my life to be able to get to work with those individuals who were such dedicated and mission-driven human beings. But I know that today, all of those rules are now either having been rolled back a little bit and then thrown back at EPA because it didn't work, they didn't follow the rules, or they're up for grabs right now. They're being reproposed for rollbacks. And I know that I wake up in the morning and I'm not particularly pleased about that. But I also know that one of the biggest dangers we're facing today with the administration in Washington, D.C., is not just the rollbacks, but the way in which the bedrock science that has supported all of the strong and sensible standards that EPA has identified and put into place, all of the science that has empowered all of this life-saving landmark laws like the Clean Air Act, all of it is now under attack, as well as the scientists themselves. We have to face that reality, and we have to push back with every ounce of our being. So I know that it is a difficult time. And now this is a technical term that you may want to use in the future if you can get away with it, but I can use it now because I'm no longer working in government. The technical term for these times is they are crazy ass. Repeat after me, crazy ass. It's a technical term, but it absolutely positively describes the world that I am living in today. And no one is going to tell me any different. And I know that all these rules are now up for grabs, rules that we worked on, and Dave, you know it, we worked 24 hours of every day. All right, slight exaggeration, maybe 18. If we got 6 hours sleep, we were lucky. We worked on them, we did them right, And they were rules that really were about delivering clean air, cleaning up contaminated land, making clean water available and accessible to the people in the United States, protecting the headwaters and the rivers and streams that feed into those drinking waters, laws that give our kids safe places to live and work and play. All of that, not just the climate rules now, are being reconsidered. In this effort to make America great again, we're apparently looking back to the 1940s as our example of where we want to head. And so I also know that the carbon pollution rules that we did, carbon pollution, I like to call it that because it is a pollutant. It's not fancy, it's not extreme. No, you can't see it, it's not right next door. It's not reflected in smokestacks like other air pollution has been. But it is tangible, it is real, it is happening, and we have to face the fact that it's a pollutant. But the good news about it when you face this is that you can think about the challenges that we have already overcome to just recognize that we can deal with carbon pollution. It is a pollutant, we can fix it, we can take care of it. Will it be difficult? Does it require broad, necessary, deep, and quick action? Yes, but if we demand it, we can fix it. And that's the attitude that we have to have. Look, I recognize that all of these rules are up for grabs. I recognize that people think I'm hallucinogenic or taking drugs of some kind when I come up here and speak with a hopeful voice. But damn it, I'm not going to lose. We can't afford to lose. You want to go sit and whine in a corner, you're going to be by yourself, because the rest of us have to fight what's going on today. The rest of us have to recognize the future and how we can demand it together. I know that we did our rules right during the Obama administration. We followed the law. We followed the science. We worked for years, literally years, to reach out to the public because you know what? We're a democracy. That means it's of, by, and for the people, not of, by, and for whoever you voted for. They work for us. We spent endless hours doing outreach on our rules, and we got them right. They were cost effective. They asked for reasonable steps forward. And they have underpinned already a tremendous clean energy revolution in the United States of America. So they may try to roll back the rules, but in the United States, when you do a final rule, you can't just decide you didn't like it anymore. You got to figure out if something went wrong or if there's new information. So I am confident that those rules will stick. But I am worried about a number of things. I am worried that people will forget that we have technology solutions to make a broad impact on carbon pollution already. We are seeing it in the United States today. Whether or not the Clean Power Plan that this administration wants to roll back ever gets rolled back, they cannot deny the fact that clean energy is taking off in the United States, and it is not going to be turned back. So we have a lot to be hopeful about. And we have to stick with the hopeful, or we will not be able to defeat the negativism that is actually going to put not our planet, but ourselves at risk. And we cannot afford to allow that to happen. But my mother always told me when I was growing up, she said, Gina, nothing good ever comes easy. She was kind of understating the challenges of today, I think. Because I always thought that the hard part we sort of got done, and what's next was what we had to deal with. So we just have to continue to be diligent. We have to continue to be strong, and we have to continue to be loud. We have to have our voices heard. Clearly, not just in the United States, but in Canada as well, and in every other country. But science has to be protected. It has to continue to be the engine that drives prosperity and innovation, like it always has been. It has defined our challenges. It's pushed discoveries and solutions that benefit all of our nations. For EPA, science was our professor, our prosecutor, and our protector. So it's no wonder right now that you see science under attack, because it is fact that is undeniable. It is information that you then have to act on. And if you prefer to look backwards rather than forwards, if you prefer to tweet and retweet alternate facts over and over, and if you prefer to do that in a way to confuse and distract and mislead and divide us, then you won't like science, because science brings clarity to the situation. And it has been the mainstay of the way in which EPA has protected public health in our environment, and it must continue to be the mainstay of all of us. Is you have to learn, you have to understand what's going on in the world, and that needs to be your guiding path forward. Unfortunately, in the United States, and I think to some extent in other countries, we see science as now being the pawn of partisan politics. That's all that it is. You see climate change being denied and on a party platform by one party and embraced on another, and never the twain shall meet. That's not what we can allow to continue to happen. So we have to work together to stop this politicization of facts and science. We have to do work in a broad and relentless way to stop the attack on science-based policy if we really want to get to a sustainable future. That's what we have to fight. And for more than 4 decades, when we've armed ourselves with sound science, we've been able to steer America away from health risks and towards a higher quality of life. But not everybody has benefited from those efforts, because pollution is not an equal opportunity killer. It goes after low-income communities. It goes after minority communities. It holds them back. It goes after the most vulnerable, women and children across the world. We have an obligation and a moral responsibility to continue to attack the pollution that is holding communities and individuals back. Because I have benefited from much of the work that's been done at EPA and across New England, because we've always had very aggressive, environmentally responsible leaders there. I can't say the same for every part in the United States. And you can think for yourself about how things work in different provinces. There is a way in which the federal government must operate to make sure that our science and our scientists stay credible, and that we use science-based policy when we want to make decisions. And so we need to, I think we need to bring reality to the table. We need to keep it as real as we can, because today we need to speak up for the science. We have to put our faith once again in human ingenuity and entrepreneurship. And I know everyone's going to say, yeah, but, can we really tackle climate change? Well, I will tell you, more than 2 decades ago, I would not have recognized the world that exists today. If someone asked me how people are going to communicate, I would have said, well, landlines will be a lot better then. Or the grid will be a lot quicker. I mean, we don't even need a grid anymore. We don't use landlines. The only reason I have a landline is they won't sell me really cheap cable unless I buy one, right? Another problem. You know, we have to realize that we have remarkable capacity to change the world. The one thing that will hold us back is that we don't try, that we lose hope, that we listen to those who have spent the last 20 years telling people and spending money to tell people that government is lousy, government can't deliver, government's the problem. Well, it isn't. It's the solution to challenges, and it can tee up incredibly good market-based approaches. What I know for sure is that science-based policies do not have to come with large economic cost. That is such a tired old argument. If I hear it one more time, even out of my own mouth, I'm going to flip out. Because the truth is that science is good for the planet, It's good for our pocketbooks, it's good for our consumers, it's good for our companies, and our science delivers certainty to businesses, and it keeps our competitive edge in the global marketplace. That's what science does for you if you use it, if you follow it, if you smartly apply it as a sound policy person. That's what you have to do, and that's what we have to think about. So when we keep it real, we just need to keep moving forward. You know, and we need to recognize that there will be challenges, but there will always be an innovation that can drive change. And I think EPA has been a big part of driving change in the pursuit of progress based on science for many years. It's defined our actions that have really allowed us to make big leaps forward. And I recognize that in Washington, D.C., the administration is doing everything it can to revive coal. Now, I understand that both the United States and Canada actually use a lot of coal to generate their electricity and their heat. I get that. But we have to move beyond coal to cleaner fuels if we ever hope to buy enough time to figure out how to get to zero carbon pollution. We have to move forward. But we have to also recognize that when you do that, remember the smart policy? When you do that, you have to think about the communities that are left behind before you leave them behind, and you have to think about what their economies for the future are. You have to think not about telling them that it's going to be okay for decades to continue to burn coal, which is not true according to science. You have to just talk to them about how they move forward as change happens. In every generation, there are changes in job shifting. This is not going to be any different, but we have to recognize it and deal with it as part of the challenges moving forward. Look, the clean energy economy in the U.S. today is built into the marketplace. It wasn't built into the marketplace by the federal government. It was built into the marketplace because the federal government did absolutely nothing until the Obama administration on clean energy. It was built into the marketplace by the regional energy markets. And the regions did it because states yelled at them and told them they had to. When we decided to move forward in New England and other places, the change that we needed to adopt at the federal level was always underpinned by grassroots levels, by cities, by states. We do not have to call it a day just because the federal government doesn't lead. I hate to give you a clue, but federal governments generally don't. They don't. This is leadership to the federal government. And forgive me, I don't mean that the federal government employees aren't great and they don't think creatively, but all their creativity is sparked after 20 years of discussing it at the grassroots level. And then people get so mad that change starts happening there, and then states go, or provinces go, oh my God, there's all these things happening. I might have to do something. And then they do it, and then when they start doing it, and it's this patchwork of things, then the federal government goes, oh my God, they're run amok. We have to bring certainty to the markets. So we're going to do something enormously creative, and it's exactly what's been talked about for 30 years. So no one is going to tell me that because the federal government in the United States of America doesn't care about climate change, that it's not happening or nothing's going to happen to take care of it. I am not sitting on my butt watching my child's future go, as my mother would say, to hell in a handbasket. Nobody knows what a handbasket is, but it's a great thing to say. You know, it's true. I have no idea what a handbasket is. But I'm not going there. That's all I know, because apparently it's really the destination, not the vehicle, that's the most important part of that statement. Look, you know, climate change is the most challenging problem I think humanity has frankly ever faced. It is the biggest public health challenge of our time. It's the biggest environmental challenge of our time. It is by far the biggest economic challenge of our time and national security challenge. We have to face these issues. And climate change is not about polar bears. They're cute if you're not too close to them. I really appreciate it. I want them to survive. But climate change is about you and me and our families and our kids' future. If you want to put a face on climate change, don't give me a face of an ugly polar bear. Give me a face of my new grandson. That's the face of climate change to me. It's time we made it personal, and it's time we took it personally when people say that climate change isn't real, blah, 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 blah. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to practice. Because the only thing I know that gets things away from the federal government and all the negativity is for us to start talking about climate change. I feel like climate change is an inappropriate conversation in mixed company. Like we're talking about some weird sex act or something. It is not inappropriate to talk about in mixed company. You can talk about it at your dinner table. All right, let's practice. I know 3 things about climate change, and you're going to repeat them after me. Number 1, climate change is real. Oh, come on. Climate change is real. Thank you. Man-made emissions are causing it. Which is why women need to rule the world. You missed that one. Come on, women. We need to rule the world. These men have screwed it up long enough. I can't stand it anymore. Look, this is what happened. It is kind of fun to watch because there are a lot of women running for office in the United States, and they are feisty young women. I like them a lot. So we'll see what happens. But I'll tell you, there are insidious things happening that we all have to be careful about. And the biggest challenge, I think, that we face now is not that people are denying climate change, because they're not. It's really ridiculous to think that in the United States, after we've gotten whacked by forest fires that are so creepy, nobody's ever seen anything like this before. And then we get Hurricane Florence, now Michael. In 2017, the United States lost over $300 billion in cost as a result of exacerbated storms and forest fires. $300 billion, in excess of that. If you gave me 1/10 of that to spend on climate adaptation so that people could begin to survive these types of storms and build infrastructure to actually help them to survive these storms, we'd be a whole lot better off. If you gave me $30 billion to help support the coal miners in West Virginia to figure out what their part of the future of the world is, that would go an awfully long way to negating the challenges that we're seeing on climate as a scientific fact. We have to get smarter here, folks. But the United States is actually understanding, 70% plus knows that climate change is happening. They just feel like there's nothing they can do about it. We have made it a problem about the planet instead of a problem about people. The planet doesn't mind warming up. Maybe it's having a blast inundating us with water and forest fires, sucking water out of here, putting more water over there. What does it care? It has no feelings. The problem we are facing here is actually a human problem. And it's time we put a human face on that problem. So I'm serious when I say if I go to another climate conference and that polar bear follows me, I'm just going to have to do something about that. Now, what I thought about doing in California was I do have my first grandson, my first grandchild, was born just 8 weeks ago. And he's the cutest little thing. I'll show you pictures. Wait afterwards. I got a lot of them. But I was going to blow up a picture of his face and stick it right on that polar bear and offer everybody else that opportunity. It's not just a symbolic gesture I'm talking about. I'm trying to make it just as important as the pollution you used to be able to see. If climate change had a color that we could see, people would be flipping out by now. They'd be watching that color get darker and darker and saying, oh my God, in 10 years we won't be able to see. You know what I mean? We need to make it personal. We need to make it real for people. We need to stop the attack on science. Do you know that this administration is not just denying climate change in the face of all of the disasters we've been facing, but they're taking the science off the webpage. They're stopping all the agencies from considering carbon pollution in infrastructure investments. Let me tell you how great this works. I have a Master of Science in Environmental Engineering. I know this. Wastewater treatment facilities don't work well when they're underwater. Neither do drinking water treatment facilities. They tend to work lousy when they're underwater. And the courts told this administration, you can't do that. That's an environmental impact that you have to assess and consider. You're giving out billions of dollars here. Why do you want to give it out to replace something that's going to be underwater? It's ridiculous. And if you want good paying jobs, do infrastructure work. Apparently there's a lot of good paying jobs in Montreal right now. Unintended. You know, they're even trying to change the way the social cost of carbon is calculated, which I found rather humorous, because they decided that for the social cost of carbon, you should not consider international impacts. Very clever. Let's try to narrow a planetary problem down to my backyard, and just let's think about that. It's infuriating because it's actually an issue that's already been spoken to by the federal government. They're actually deciding they don't want to think about co-benefits. They want to eliminate direct benefits, like why would anybody worry about the benefits of wetlands when you're trying to protect water? I don't know. Seemed like a good idea to us at the time. Wetlands do actually matter when you're trying to protect drinking water. And they are basically eliminating science advisory boards all over the place. The latest one was that pesky little board that looks at particulate matter. How many of you people do anything on air pollution? None of you? Oh man, you gotta get with a program. Particulate matter is one of the most dangerous substances that is actually impacting your and my lives every single day. It's one of those creepy things that the more you look at it, the worse it looks, sort of like me every morning, and as time goes on. But having said all that, we can actually push back. We can actually make a difference. Now, I know that many of you are probably worried because some of you may have read the IPCC report that just came out. The most interesting thing for me is when it came out, I was in London, and all I noticed was the fact that it was actually front page news everywhere. Every newspaper, that was the big issue. Every TV, that was the big issue. I don't know what it was like in Canada, but in the US, you probably had to struggle to get it to be the last story. And it was probably a 10-second clip. You know, it's so frustrating to me to actually see how much the European Union is understanding the limitations of resources when big countries like perhaps yours and mine don't realize that you can't run away from natural resources. They have to be protected, or sustainability doesn't work, or our health cannot be protected. But the IPCC report was a tremendous wake-up call. It was a wake-up call in three different aspects, and I want to mention them. First, it told us that our target of 2 degrees centigrade is not sufficient. It needs to be 1.5. Now, why did they do that? They did that because we are already seeing tremendous impacts from climate. So going to 2 offers not the level of insurance you need to stop runaway climate change from happening. They are looking at the Arctic already being 1.5 degrees more already. They are looking at Antarctica and Greenland already having sea level rise that is pretty astronomical. They're looking at the tremendous die-offs of our coral reefs, which are tremendously threatening, I think, to all of us. And I could go on and on. But the other thing they mentioned was something that you need to hang on to, because I'm hanging on to it. They said that we have the scientific knowledge to understand this problem. They said we have the technical capability to address this problem. And they said that we also have the financial capacity across the world to address this problem in a way that will result in a more sustainable and equitable world, because you have to have both. What we're lacking, which they also said, was political will. Now, how do you get political will? I'll tell you how you don't. Let me start with that. Every morning when I get up, this is what I hear. Can you believe that? It's my husband watching MSNBC. I love my husband dearly. He has never been political in his whole life. He's a raving lunatic now. He wakes me up, and out of a sound sleep, and I go upstairs, and he says, Gina, you wouldn't believe it. You got to see the tweet. And finally I said, Ken, I love you with all my heart, but shut up. Turn the TV off. Think about the good things that are going on in the world. I have spent all of my life focused on these issues, and there's no way in hell this administration is going to bring me down. I live in the city of Boston. We are a resilient city. We are Boston strong. There is no way that you and I can have our voices be quieted by those that want to deny. It is time to speak up, folks. If you haven't registered to vote and voted, then don't talk to me anymore, because I have no use for you. We live in a democracy. If you want change to happen, you're the change that has to happen. Now, I go to colleges and I tell people, I'm really sorry that I screwed up the world. And I'm really sorry that I wasn't able to completely fix it. But you have to get up off your own butt and do something about it. You have to learn about the challenge. You have to embrace the science. And you have to focus on solutions, not negativity. And there are solutions today. And there will be more solutions if we get together and we speak with one voice. Because we have market-winning renewable energy and energy efficiency. You know, you have Republican governors that are buying energy efficiency and renewable fuel like crazy. You know why? Not so they can stand up and say, I believe in climate change, because that's against the rules, the party rules. They're standing up because it's cheaper. Their consumers are saving money. It happens to be cleaner than fossil fuel burning. So we have technologies that if you broaden to everybody, we can make that next leap forward and buy us a little bit more time in that carbon budget. We can be sending investment signals that we need to send so that the technology innovators are working hard today to get us beyond what we can achieve in 2025 or 2030. That's what the power of hope brings. That's what the power of science buys you. And we cannot fall asleep just because D.C. in the United States has fallen asleep. We have to continue. And I see incredible signs of optimism. And I'll give you some quick examples. You know, when the day after the administration changed, not that I know this date, but January 20th, 2017, the day after we had women's marches. And we should play the videos from those women's marches every single day. Because I went from the doldrums to the best high that I've ever had. It was the most exciting time because I have never seen marches like that. I have never seen celebrations of humanity like that. I have never seen individuals getting together in the face of difficulties saying, we're going to stand up and we're going to work together. And I've never seen such cool signs. Do you remember any of them? My favorite was this white poster board, and the poster board, all it said was, I can't believe we still have to march for this. SHI, you know what the last word is. Isn't that the coolest thing? It's true. We're still fighting it. We have the Me Too movement, and we have folks in Washington making fun of it. We can't tolerate that, women out there. We have to stand up for ourselves, and we have to demand that everybody pays attention to these issues. And then we had the science marches, which were great. They were horrible marchers. They don't know how to march, I'll tell you. They don't. They're really great little people, but scientists who I hang around with now need a little more people skills. I don't know if you see the same thing, but they got themselves out there. You know, they had their little lab coats and all that kind of stuff, so they'd look really cool. Not. And my favorite sign was, society should worry when geeks have to demonstrate. Isn't that cool? Having spent time at Harvard, I totally agree with that sign. You know, so we have to keep the nerds speaking up, but we need to give them some help. So this is what I'm doing at Harvard. I am trying to translate really good science into language that people understand. Because in the 60s, we used to march and we used to say information is power. Do you remember that? With our tie-dyed shirts and our bell-bottoms that no longer fit very well, I gave it a try. Information still is power. Information is what a democracy depends on to actually be successful. So that's why you have to talk about these things. We have to talk about climate change at our dinner table, even though it might be an awkward conversation, especially at the Thanksgiving one when Uncle Fred comes over. And when your in-laws are there, and they may not agree with you. This is not a discussion point to raise people's concerns. It is a discussion point to share information, to try to get away from the partisanship. And we need to get it into Main Street, and we need to get it into Wall Street. One of the things I'm doing right now, and when I left DC, was to work for a company called Pegasus Capital Advisors. They're a private equity firm out of New York. I worked for them because I had no idea how the financial markets work. I couldn't understand why technologies that were great wouldn't already be taken up and were used everywhere. And there's complexities there. But I am seeing shifts there. It's not just states and local levels and mayors and governors who are actually standing up and fighting this lack of fact-based policies and fighting against the lack of science-based policies. Everybody is beginning to stand up, not just the geeks and the women, and the business community is standing up. They're focused on impact investment. They have Larry Fink, who runs BlackRock, which happens to have a pocket or a pocketbook the size of $3 trillion. And they said they're not going to invest in any company that doesn't invest with a purpose. Change is happening. You know why? Because millennials are the consumers of today already. Millennials are demanding it. I stayed at Harvard after doing a fellowship. I stayed there because the students there were what inspired me. They were the ones that gave me hope. They worked every single day to say that the world is not equitable and I'm not going to have it anymore. They demanded that people pay attention to the science. They weren't living in a la-la land, and I loved it because they were challenging, they were insightful. They're the ones that are going to demand a sustainable future because it's their lives that are at risk. It's them that are the mothers of kids that are going to be having asthma attacks and allergy attacks. They're the ones that are going to be worried about the spread of contagious diseases everywhere. They're the ones that are going to be worried about whether they have clean water for their kids to drink or clean air for them to breathe. They're the ones that are going to be demanding a new future. That's why the business community is stepping up, not just because they think they should. They know that the markets of the future have to respond to that demand, and it is heartwarming to see. It is an incredible opportunity we have to drive change. So right now, in my final points, I want to ask you a really big favor. Don't sit on the sidelines on these issues. It's not good enough to decide what you won't stand for. You have to decide what you do stand for, and you have to stand up for it. You might even have to march. It's okay. You're not marching to be political, even if you're a scientist. You're marching to demand that science not be politicized. That's why you're marching. No democracy, yours or mine, is a spectator sport. And when people speak out, change can happen. And we share the same core values, folks. We want a world that's healthier. We want a world that's safer. We want capitalism that works for everybody, not just for some. We want fairness and equity. That's what we have to stand up for. That's what you're learning when you're in this school. So what I am suggesting to you is, even though my husband every morning yells at MSNBC, now that I told him to shut up, he doesn't. I want you to do the same thing. Get away from the television set. Talk to people. Get science back into the discussion. Demand that it can't be taken out. Keep your foot on the gas, or should I say accelerator, and put your faith in human ingenuity and entrepreneurship. That is what stopped the 60s from being the 60s and brought us into the decade of today. That is what is going to move us forward. That's what's going to deliver a sustainable future. So let's run towards a cleaner, healthier, sustainable environment. Why wouldn't we? Why isn't that good no matter what? Because the environment and a healthy environment is never going to be window dressing. It was not for the 6 Democrats I work for, 5 of them Republicans, and I made progress with each and every one of them because they knew they had to pay attention to the science. Let's get back there. This is not about the Democrats or the Republicans. This is about you and I. This is about our families. And we have seen change happen. You know, I don't know how much all of you have been following the work of the students from the Parkman School in Florida. But if you sit back and you become hopeless, then you deny the ability of those students to make the change they made. You had a handful of students that saw that travesty at their school and demanded change, and they got one of the most conservative governors in the United States to sign a gun bill. If they can do it, we can do it. If we deny our opportunity and our responsibility to demand that kind of change, to step up and have our voices be heard, then you disrespect them and all of those wonderful women who march together, the ones that are going to save us. So, my last point, get out there. Fight the good fight. That's what we have always done as nations together. Pull up your big girl pants, your big boy pants, and your gender neutral pants. Take action. Thanks very much. All right. Can we do some questions?
Yes. Thank you very much for a very lively talk. I will remember from that we can make a difference, right?
Yes, we can.
But I have a confession to make. I'm a biologist, and I give a talk on climate change and biodiversity, and that included the polar bear.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We like birds and bunnies and polar bears, but as anybody from EPA like Dave knows, we actually do people. So that's where my heart is.
We're going to take questions for about 15, 20 minutes. There are microphones, I think. And I'll ask you to keep it to one question so we can have more people asking questions.
No questions. Good. I've answered everybody's.
Yes, over there.
Okay, hands are coming up.
Over there.
Well, they're taping it, so you probably should. Oh, shoot, I used language I shouldn't. Bleep, 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 bleep. Okay. Did you get a microphone? Okay. What are we doing? What are we doing?
I got a simple question.
Yes.
I remember when nuclear power came back in, after the Second World War, and it had all the qualities we needed, including no carbon, no greenhouse gases. Nuclear power plants have been around for 60 years. There's 400 of them in the world, and China and Russia are building another 200.
Yep.
And they work. And they're talking about the waste. There are little swimming pools, Olympic-sized swimming pools, that got the rods that are spent in about 40 days. I was a nuclear engineer at the time. And hey, they're sitting there still minding their own business, and nobody's being hurt. And nuclear power is cheaper than even hydro. But nobody wants it because they're scared.
Okay, your question is, should it be part of the future? Is that your
Yes.
question? Yeah. Ernie Moniz and I used to argue about this a lot. Ernie Moniz was the Secretary of Energy who knew a lot about nuclear power. And in fact, he was from MIT and ran the energy lab there. So he was really hot on it, and a lot of people are. I mean, I understand your point. It is carbon neutral. The problem in the United States is it's very expensive to build. And you still have, whether you agree with it or not, people are fundamentally terrified of radiation. And I'm not suggesting you can't teach them, but there is apparently, according to Ernie and others, and I've read some about it, a whole new generation of nuclear power that may be able to get over the hump in terms of the cost of construction of those facilities. We will see, but many people think it's the way of the world. God bless them, but I do think there's challenges in terms of education and perception.
And the capitalists can't make any money off of nuclear power plants. That's the
That's
biggest
not
problem.
true. I know many capitalists who make a lot of money off of it.
No, most countries have.
But I get your point. But right now, it's just not winning in the marketplace. It's very difficult.
We'll take
Yep.
one question on the other side.
Thank you. Good evening. Oh, is this on? Excellent. Thank you. Good evening. Thanks to McGill for making this speech possible. And if you're interested, Divest McGill is one of the local student bodies here that actually takes action along these lines.
Excellent.
I had a question for you in regards to your time at the EPA. And I'm wondering if you have any insights into, I guess it's been a couple of years with the current administration, but the science standing on the shoulders of giants from what you've seen from the past decades.
Yeah.
Here in Canada, we had a similar political situation where the federal government turned off a lot of the science for weather.
I remember.
Yes. So you find yourself in that situation now with the current administration. Your appeal to us is on two levels. One is to get involved. I guess, would you suggest from what you see now with the current weather climate situations like Hurricane Michael
Yeah.
and some of the unforeseen disasters in the last 18 months, for the two-part question is, one, did you anticipate this? And secondly, would you suggest that we get involved on a local, regional,
Yeah.
national level?
That's a really good question.
Or to try and change it as a market force?
Well, did I anticipate it? I mean, I did not anticipate that. I did not anticipate the last IPCC report, which made it very clear that things are worse than what had been predicted they would be at this point in time. But I expected you'd be seeing more and more the damages associated with a changing climate. And I think we've just failed miserably to make that information available to people and to communicate it effectively, which is why I'm at Sea Change, because that's what we're going to do. I'm going to do an all-out campaign to understand what climate change means and why it's a big deal. Now, there was a second part to your question, and I totally forgot.
Well, the question was, standing on the shoulders of giants with your experience at the EPA,
Yeah.
Working EPA, did you anticipate, I guess, the geometric change that you've seen?
No, oh God, no. I knew it would be difficult during this administration. This administration is not just attacking climate, it's attacking everything. You know, and the rules the industry themselves don't want changed. You know, the auto rules are a good example of that. You know, we went and reduced carbon pollution and made more efficient vehicles required, and now that's being relooked at. And most of the automakers are saying, well, we didn't really want this. Because it puts them in a dither. It creates business uncertainty when you don't need it. And they don't need it. And so they're challenged. And right now, they're now looking at the mercury and air toxic standard for utilities, which was a huge success, has already been fully complied with. And the industry, the main lobbyists for the utility industry, told the administration they don't want it relooked at. And it's going to come out as a new proposal soon. So they're playing to a specific base. So I didn't realize, and I haven't really seen this, the way that this administration is operating. Now, you asked where should you go in terms of your efforts? Should it focus on the local or state level? You know, I'm very partial to local level action because I want people to understand it, and I want them to learn from their neighbors. And so I think working at the local level, you can make a tremendous amount of difference. You can think creatively. You can push states or provinces to do the right thing. You can make it visible to people you voted for. So in the U.S., most of the activity is on the state and local level, for sure. And so I think we can fill in a lot of gaps. The challenge that we face is that there will be, we would have moved much quicker and much faster if the federal government continued to act. That's the challenge.
Just a quick note, one of the key marks of the Divest movement across Canada is that it's entrenched in most universities and operates at a citywide level. And so where cities change, regions change. Where regions change, government changes. So it's a good place to start.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Thank you.
And get into public service, because you need to have really good folks who can weather these storms with us.
Hi there.
Yes. Hi.
I'm an American living north of the border. I lived in both Los Angeles and New York City in the 60s. I remember not trusting any air I couldn't see and not being able to eat any fish that came out of the local waters. I remember fires in the Hudson. I remember when they discovered mercury in all the swordfish in California. Because of that, I have rain barrels, I have compost heaps, I have an electric car. But I also spend a lot of time in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
You do?
Where
Who the hell would spend time in Tulsa, Oklahoma? Too many earthquakes there.
Gotta go visit family. Well, you know, there were never earthquakes when I lived there when I was young.
No.
But now they have earthquakes because of putting too much water in where they've been fracking.
Yes, they do. Yeah,
they're
do.
paying the price
Hundreds
of what they're doing.
Hundreds of them. They now have, what happened was they made some changes. They have now less earthquakes, but they're higher. They're more intense. Like 5, up to 5. It's amazing. I'm sorry. We could chit chat.
No, it's okay. This is sort of the conversation I want to have.
Yeah.
I go to Oklahoma, and here you're sort of preaching to the choir, but I go to Oklahoma and yell and scream and raise my voice. I have gotten some friends to get hybrid cars, to set up composters, but you know, I still go around seeing how do you deal with people who are, their daughters are getting pregnant at 15 and dropping out of school because they don't believe in sex education, they don't believe in abortion, they don't believe in supporting Planned Parenthood. You have these young boys who are going around driving huge pickup trucks. I mean, I have a nephew.
Hey, what do I look like, a miracle worker? What do you want from me?
I just wonder, how do we reach these people who live in a place that has so much space that they, what's a landfill? It's not a big deal. We've got plenty of space for them. Why recycle? How do you deal with people who have such a different reality, especially when it comes to religion?
Okay, I get it. Well, religion is a big factor in some of this. Let me be very quick with this, because I certainly don't have all the answers. But we all know that a country that doesn't invest in education is going to be in trouble. And our education system in the United States is in trouble. And that's one of the big factors, is that when you educate women, they don't get pregnant at 15 years old. Some do, but most don't. So education is clearly the issue. But let me give you just a small story. There was a congressman named Inglis is his name. I just did an event with him because he was a 6-term congressman, and he came from, South Carolina. And he was, when he was elected, he all he had to do was hear that Al Gore thought climate change was a problem, and he decided that because Al Gore thought that, he would deny it. And so for five or six terms, that was his position. And then his son turned 18. And his son told him, I'm going to vote, Dad, for the first time. Isn't this exciting? He said, that's great. Are you going to vote for me? And he said, I'm not sure. You have to clean up your act on the environment. And he said, what do you mean? And he started reading, and he said, and he took a trip to Antarctica. And he took another trip, and he met scientists. And he's a very religious person, as many are. And he said that he realized the sincerity of the people, the scientists talking to him one-on-one. And he changed, and he lost his seat because he tried to put a bill through that put a tax on carbon. And he lost his seat, and he was not unhappy about it. He did what he thought was morally correct. And now he's going around, and he has a group where he gives speeches to folks in the conservative religious community and others, and talking to Republicans solely about climate change. And that's how it's got to happen. That's what I mean. It starts with your family. People, because you're not from Tulsa, are not going to pay attention to you. You know, it's somehow we have to break through this and really, you know, recognize and find trusted people who can speak with others and get over the hump here. I don't want everybody to figure out that climate change is happening because they're caught up in the worst storms ever, because we have no fish left in the ocean anymore. We can't, so it's very challenging, but people can change. Well, the only thing I will tell you is that I don't think that's true of young people. They just need to get out. They need to get out, and they need to vote, and they need to get politicians who listen to the majority of us. There are always going to be people that will not listen to the science or the facts because it doesn't fit with their view of the world. And I get that there's been a concerted campaign, well-funded, to deny climate. But we got over this hump with tobacco. It was the same situation. We just need a campaign with normal human beings showing what the damage is, who's being harmed, and the solutions. What I keep saying is we're fighting about moving to a world that is healthier, safer, more economically sound, where we have more jobs, and it's more just. What are we fighting about? Run! Get there as soon as possible. So I can't solve all these problems, but not talking about it and not finding trusted advisors that can talk to folks is a mistake. We have to get it. We have to get it off the sidelines.
Your question, please? Hi, I am a student here at McGill, and I'm also a member of Divest McGill, which is the group that's trying to get this university to stop investing in fossil fuel companies.
I'm sorry, say that last part again. Stop what?
We're trying to get this university to stop investing in fossil fuel companies.
Can you go to Harvard next?
So we've been active on this campus for 6 years now. And for 6 years, this university has said to us that it does not want to stop investing in fossil fuel companies. It has said to us that this university does not think that climate change causes, quote, grave social injury. We know that climate change causes reduced quality of life and kills people, and it will continue to kill people, and it will continue to cause a dramatically reduced quality of life for everybody on this planet. But this university has said multiple times that this does not count as grave social injury, and that does not qualify for them to stop investing in fossil fuel companies. We know that there is an obvious connection.
Do they always use that as a criteria for investment?
For their socially responsible investment. This university has stopped investing in tobacco. They have precedent for divesting from companies and organizations.
Okay, I get your point. Is there a question here?
So my question is, what do we do when our university does not uphold science, the science that it is supposed to be teaching us? And as a university, on
Yeah,
the
I
world
get it.
stage,
Yeah.
how are we supposed to continue to keep acting in good faith and, keep going when our university tells us that it doesn't care about science?
Well, I think that's like anything else. You got to keep working at it. But I think what you're facing is people not wanting to do the thing you don't want them to do, which is the disinvestment, right? That's the issue. And Harvard's facing the same problem, and it drives the students there nuts. And we'll see whether that continues. But the only thing I can suggest is that some of the students in Harvard work with the Harvard Business School and actually did an assessment that it had the university divested, how much bigger their endowment would be now.
We've done that here as well.
This is fundamentally an economic problem, and it's a problem with who's on boards and how they think. I thought one of the neatest things that the focuses of attention now with some of the larger impact investors has to do with getting more diversity on the boards. And I think, seeing if you can get folks on the boards that are more, that think differently and that provide diverse opinions, that will help. Talk about what they are investing in and try to get shifts in it. But you can't stop speaking the truth about what the science says, no matter who says it's not true.
I'll
All right.
just briefly mention that there's a diverse motion that has been passed at the Senate level, so.
Ooh.
We're still working on it. We'll see what's happening.
Okay.
If anyone is interested in being involved, look us up on Facebook, Divest McGill, and you can learn
I
more.
love that woman. She's got a campaign going. That's cool.
Question here, but I think.
Oh, Lord, that's the last one? Well, you guys have long questions, I have to say.
Hi, my name is Megan. I'm also a student here. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which I think as a city exemplifies a lot of the change that you said the U.S. can and has gone through. Some of the change that I think is necessary is moving away from a capitalist economy and trying to stop that. But you mentioned that you want a capitalist economy that works for everyone. And I'm wondering, since the current state of the world is a capitalist economy based on economic growth as a goal and a society based on consumption, how do you think that is possible moving forward?
Well, I think it has to, well, first of all, the debate, to me, the debate isn't about the form of the government, it's the outcome. You need a government that represents the interests of the people. Right now, the United States, I think, is struggling with that for many reasons. But I believe in the system of government I operate in. I believe that if it represented the people, it would do well, and that's where my views lie. Now, that doesn't mean I will disagree with people who think differently on it, but the thing that you should hang together more than anything is to join together with what you value. What are your core values? What is the outcome you want? We're going to see this again in democracy in the United States. We're going to see people arguing, is it capitalism, is it socialism? Who do I vote for? I don't care as long as we share the same core values and you're moving towards it. That is, if that becomes the marker, then you will divide yourself and you will lose from those who don't share your core values. So just be careful as you move forward about where you land. At Harvard, the Harvard Business School is not known for its innovation. Let me just put it this way. They have a course that they teach now at Harvard that 60% of the master's students sign up for their first semester, and it's called Reimagining Capitalism. Its whole focus is how do you have capitalism that is responsive to every community and doesn't lead to the inequities that we're seeing today. So I am not an expert in governance, but I know people. And so no matter who shares your core values, support those core values, and don't let anybody divide you, or it will be divide and conquer and you will lose. At least in the United States, that's what I see is happening. Okay? Thanks very much. All right, everybody, thank you.